authorized by state law so that residents and others can observe council's deliberations. We do strive to provide reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on matters being considered, so we'll pause periodically for public comment, probably every 20 minutes or so. Is that council's will? So during these times, if you wish to address council or to make a comment, if you in the room, raise your hand, and after being recognized, you can go over to the podium. We need you to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt. We need that for the minutes. If you're on Zoom, you can submit a comment by using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, or you can raise your virtual hand, and once again, we'll promote you so that you can speak, and you'll need to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt. And finally, if you're watching on cable TV, if you're tuned in on Facebook or watching on the live stream on YouTube, you can send an email to us at questions@greenbeltmd.gov. Limit your remarks to 3 minutes and speak on one topic related to the question under consideration. And we ask that you avoid questioning the motives of others. And in general, let's all be civil in our remarks. So tonight, we are talking traffic calming, and we're talking about the study that's taken place focused on Greenbelt Center City. I guess it's been over the past 3 months or so. And I was just listening to the radio to WAMU today, and they were talking about nationally and in the state of Maryland, pedestrian and bicycle fatalities are higher than they've ever been after the pandemic. So this focus on traffic calming is in Greenbelt is another step as we sort of move forward to make sure that this is a welcoming place for pedestrians and cyclists, and also a safe place for cars. So I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Summerone. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Mayor? Good evening, council. Good evening, guests.
Our assistant city clerk, Shania Lashley Mullen. Shania, how are you? Okay, and we're joined by Terry Ruby, our Director of Planning and Community Development. Terry, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So if you can introduce your staff members, Jamie, and also our contractors, consultants that have helped us and sort of frame the issue. And I think you have a PowerPoint or a presentation to share, something like that.
Yes, well, I'm going to kick it right over to Jamie Fair, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development, who's been managing the project, to give a little overview and what our steps that we've done to date. And then she'll be turning over to Greenman Peterson, our consultants on this, to make a PowerPoint presentation of the summary of the report to date.
Good evening. Jamie Fair, Assistant Director of Planning, and I'm joined by our consultant, GPI. We have Angie Strevig and Alan Wang. So I'll turn it over to them in just a few minutes, but for some background on the study, planning receives traffic calming requests to study different things, whether they're sight distance concerns, speeding concerns, stop sign concerns, all of these things throughout the year. And we gather those and try to tackle as many as possible. But over the years, we had quite a few on these roads that are included in the study. So we are looking at Ridge Road from Lassner to Westway, Lakeside from Lake Crest to Crescent, Lassner from Ridge to Crescent. There's a lot of overlap where they connect. Green Hill and Hillside in their totality as they connect as well. And we saw the opportunity, particularly with the ARPA PED bike funding that we were using, to take a closer look at these roads. Part of the information we provided to our consulting firm was the PED bike master plan update. So they had that at their hands, as well as some other information. That's why the appendices are so long. There's a lot of information around crashes in there as well. And we see this as an opportunity also to kind of learn some best practices that we can use on other roadways. So we hope that we'll be able to take some of the final recommendations and perhaps adapt them for other roadways across the city. So while it is very focused in scope, we do think that it will provide a greater opportunity for our traffic calming work in the coming years. Did I miss anything? So with that, I will turn it over. We have a brief presentation and then a lot of examples. I know a number of you were, so actually, and I can say this, I know you'll go over it in just a second, but so far, the draft study has been reviewed by city staff. We then took it to APB. I included their initial comments, some of their initial comments in your packet materials for review. Then we had, just a few weeks ago, an open community meeting. We had really great turnout, and a number of you all were there, so you have seen the boards. We didn't bring the boards here. We didn't want to clutter up the room, but we have slides that are representative of each of those boards, so we can look at all of those recommendations this evening. But we gathered a number of comments from that, both verbally as well as folks wrote down a lot of stuff. We'll gather comments this evening, and then we will be reviewing all of those comments at the staff level again before a final draft is drafted. And then I believe this is in your timeline as well. It will go back to APB as a final draft for review, and they will draft a report with their recommendation to council. Will come back to council for final adoption.
Hey, thank you very much. So once again, this is a work session tonight. We'll hear the presentation on the draft report, and council will ask questions and make comments. The public may also make some additional comments. And based on the feedback, it would go back to our APB Advisory Planning Board. They would do a final report that would come back to council, and any actions that have been agreed upon would come back to council in a meeting. So if we talk about something tonight, it does not imply that you're necessarily going to do this or that short term. It's a longer term thing, and there's more opportunities for the public to weigh in as well as council. So welcome, GPI. What does GPI stand for?
Green and Peterson.
Okay, catchy name.
Thanks. You wanna go?
Let's see, okay. And I just want to make sure, so this, we got it on the screen, so it's going out on our YouTube, Facebook, YouTube, and is it on cable TV?
Got a thumbs up from.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Today, we'll be presenting the traffic calming study draft report at Greenbelt City Center. Just to go over the project team once again, we've all met them, Jamie Farrer, Terry Hruby, and we are GPI. My name is Alan, and I will be presenting the draft findings of our report. So the project stems from a safety concern within the historic Greenbelt in relation to vehicular speeding. This project evaluates conditions along the following roadways: Ridge Road from Lassner Lane to Westway, Lakeside Drive from Lakecrest Drive to Crescent Road, Lassner Lane from Ridge Road to Crescent Road, Green Hill Road from Crescent Road to Research Road, and Hillside Road from Crescent Road to Research Road. Like Jamie touched upon, today is the City Council work session, and previously we had the public meeting, and then before that we also met with APB. And also, as you mentioned, we will be collecting all comments and hopefully be making revisions by, say, this winter, and make revisions to the draft report and resubmit back to APB. And then from there, with the recommendation, it will go back to council. This we're anticipating to be hopefully in spring 2025. So I just want to take a moment to start with a brief introduction to traffic calming. Up here is a definition by the Federal Highway Administration on their definition of traffic calming. Different agencies will give a varying definition, but in essence, what I like to synthesize is that traffic calming is the different techniques or methods of slowing vehicles down within residential and commercial areas. The reason why we want to do this is for safety reasons. The Federal Highway Administration has extensively done research and have proven that based on vehicular impact speeds to pedestrians, the higher the speed, the greater the impact and injury to the pedestrians. So for this project, the process starts with identifying our project limits. From there, we gather our existing data and then use a metric to evaluate the data, and from there, we assign priorities to locations using the data, and then evaluate all the different traffic calming strategies. And from that pool of strategies, provide recommendations for each location based on our findings. As I mentioned earlier, our project is along Glassner Lane, Green Hill Road, Hillside, Lake Crest, and Ridge Road. In this slide, you can see all these roadways are outlined in blue. From there, we broke it down into modular pieces and used an alphanumeric ID to assign locations, identifications to further evaluate in this study. We start with 4A and end with 4B. This slide represents the data that we collected for our research. As you can see, we laid down automatic traffic recorders, or ATR for short, along the different roadways to collect the average daily traffic, or ADTs, and the 85th percentile speeds. The ATRs can be identified in these red lines along the blue roadway sections with callouts to their respective ADTs and their respective speeds. For example, when I mention speeds, I do mean the 80th percentile speed. What the 85th percentile speed is the observation of vehicles traveling along this section of roadway where 85% of the drivers were driving at or lower of the speed posted. So if the speed was 29 miles per hour, and that is our 85th percentile speed, that would mean that 85% of drivers driving through this section were going at or less than 29 miles per hour. It is not the average speed. This slide represents the number of collisions collected over a 4-year period from 2019 to 2023. The data was provided to us by the City of Greenbelt, and how we organized it were based off the reports and where the incidences occurred per the addresses. The locations can be identified with either red circles where they happened at intersections or along stretches of roadways, which you can see outlined in red. These collisions vary from pedestrian injury to property damages and hit and runs, and are lumped together as such along these red sections of roadway. So from here, it was time to determine the metrics to evaluate all the data we collected. How we did that was by assigning point values. As I mentioned before, we collected the average daily traffic, or ADTs, and for example, if the location had a number of ADTs between 100 and 250, we assigned a point value of 0.5. For the 85th percentile, if it was observed that the speeds were traveling, say, less than or equal to 26 miles per hour, we assigned a point value of 0.5. And then, of course, for the collision history, since it was over a 4-year period, we just divide that total by 4, and then based on the average annual crashes, we assigned a point value. For example, if the average annual crashes was between 0.51 and 1, we would assign a point value of 0.5. What this culminates to is an overall rating, which we can assign a priority of either low, medium, or high. As you can see, depending on the range, for example, if the point totals were between 0 and 2, we would assign a priority of low. So let's,
Question on that page?
sure.
So it looks like on the previous one, so that's the 85th percentile travel speed. So that doesn't take into account what the speed limit was at all. Or are the speed limits the same on all the study stretches? Okay, so so there's no differential there then. Okay.
Megatine? All right. In this slide, I'd like to demonstrate a few different techniques of traffic calming. As you can see in the screen, there are speed humps, which are on the top left, curb bump outs on the right, raised crosswalks, street narrowing on the bottom right, and pedestrian refuge islands on the bottom left. This list and these images are not an exclusive list of different type of traffic calming studies, but these are the most prevalent ones that we may see throughout our daily commutes. This slide represents an example of the recommendations that we provided. These images show the ultimate or long-term recommendations we provide. There is a short-term recommendation per the report for each location as well. In this example, there are several different colors, and I'd like to present to you what they represent. In the sections of green, these are areas where we are proposing reduction in pavement of the roadway in particular for this location. This is figure 4A, which is at Ridge Road and Lassner Lane. Here, we're recommending that we reduce the lane widths along Ridge Road to, one, allow drivers to travel at a slower speeds because wider roadways tend to promote higher speeds of travel. With roadway narrowing, drivers tend to be more cautious around that. In addition to that, we are also trying to realign the existing crosswalk that is currently at a diagonal direction. We find that it is much more conducive to pedestrians if they walk in a perpendicular path. In combination with that, it would be a bump out along those crosswalks to allow pedestrians to cross at a much smaller distance, so they're not on the roadway as long, as well as bringing up the stop bars on both Ridge Road and Lassner Lane. This would allow drivers to complete their turning movements at a quicker pace and not allow them to linger in the intersection as long as they have to be. In addition, we also have some sharrows to promote bicyclists to share the road. In addition to that, we also are demonstrating that driveways that are impacted by these proposed recommendations would be extended as well. And for anywhere that there weren't sidewalk, or if there is a need for rehabilitating the sidewalk, they are shown in orange. So beyond this slide, we are also going to be showing the different locations along the rest of the report. Jamie, am I going to just talk about all of them?
So I think now would probably be a good time for general questions, and then we could go through, it's a slightly laborious to go through each and every one, but again, having the boards in here also didn't make sense because folks online wouldn't be able to see them. So maybe general questions, and then we can go through each of the recommendations in the order in which they are in the.
Okay, Ms. Poe.
Yeah, I just have, what are the yellow lines?
Oh, on the previous
On
one.
the
I think.
previous slide, what are these?
Sure. These yellow lines. The double yellow, yes. So with the extension of the stop bar, the double yellow lines would also be extended towards the stop bar.
Oh, so those are existing double yellow lines that you would extend out?
Yes, so for clarification, the much brighter highlight yellow are proposed, and
Oh,
the aerial imagery kind of shows the existing double yellow, if you can see. It is a little hard to distinguish, I will admit, sometimes.
Thank you.
And so the reasoning behind moving those is you're putting it closer, the stop sign closer to the intersection. Is that the idea? Okay.
Let's see, looking at that slide, the crosswalk bars on the right-hand side, looks like they've been changed so it's perpendicular instead of diagonal.
Yes.
Is that correct? Is
That
that
is
a
correct.
consistent recommendation, or are there some intersections where a diagonal crosswalk is preferable?
I believe perpendicular is more recommended.
So you're shortening the path to decrease the amount of time that the pedestrians are in the intersection. And by the narrowing, you're putting them more in a site of visibility for safety as well. In the Continental, I don't know if you're talking about the actual lines being perpendicular. That crosswalk striping is the common standard now. It's called Continental.
So speaking on the alignment as opposed to the format.
Got it.
Yeah, I think you will see that alignment.
Okay, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is squeezing all that down, is that going to be an issue for the trucks that are going to be coming and going out of the water tower there? Because there's always, some big trucks or something coming and going out of there.
So we've done some preliminary studies using turning movements, using the city bus as our design vehicle. We do not see an issue with buses making this turning movement.
Buses, I'm talking about, large utility vehicles, work trucks and stuff.
So additional design would be taken
We're
that
gonna
into
be
account.
rebuild, I don't know how long, I guess it's not gonna be in for a while, but they're gonna be rebuilding or finishing the water tower, so I'm sure they'll have tractor trailers and all kind of stuff coming in there, but that's a temporary thing, but,
Exactly.
yeah.
But those kinds of things are information that would be helpful to reassess what vehicle to use and adjust accordingly.
Each of these improvements where we're doing curb extension would be part of an engineering study, and one of the things there that we learned that, if you remember on Breezewood Drive, lessons learned, we need, radii turn templates for different types of vehicles. So that would be all part of the engineering study before implementation would occur.
Yeah, I think just to build on that point, so these are very conceptual and not engineered drawings. So that's not necessarily exactly where the stop bar will go, but the recommendation is to extend it out from where it is now.
And obviously, we would have to do some assessment and bring it back and have a discussion about safety versus parking. Because that is something, these improvements will result in loss of parking in several locations, especially where we're doing crosswalks and so forth. As you know, we've had that discussion. It's necessary to daylight them to provide for safety for all users. So that is all something, that we would have to, we would discuss further and evaluate.
Understood. So once again, this is a conceptual draft presentation on conceptual improvements regarding traffic calming. So let's keep moving because we actually have a stop at about 9 o'clock. We have another section of the work session. So please.
Sure, I could go through each one real briefly. This one is Ridge Road at 7 Court Research Road. Once again, we use the same color schemes for many of the improvements. It's just a matter of location. For example, once again, we're proposing to remove some parking and narrow the roadway down, as well as providing some sidewalk, where right now, as you can see in this middle image, there isn't much of an existing sidewalk as it is. This one is at Ridge Road at Greenbelt Elementary School and 65th Ridge Road. Once again, curb bump outs are proposed as a recommendation, as well as crosswalks with striping and sidewalk. Up at the top left, you can see a schematic of a raised crosswalk. Here we have Ridge Road at Plateau Place. Once again, this is a recommendation from us to have curb bump outs to allow pedestrians to cross much more quickly, as well as you can see the striping. This is Ridge Road at Northway. Similarly, many curb bump outs are proposed, as well as extending the stop bar with the double yellow as well. There is some removal of parking up along Ridge Road. Here we have Ridge Road from 46th Court Ridge Road to Eastway / 44th Court Road. Again, curb bump outs, some sidewalk, and some parking removed is part of the proposed recommendations, as well as crosswalks. This is 33 Ridge Road improvements, which I believe we've already submitted earlier, and I believe is in implementation, right?
It hasn't been implemented yet, but it was a part of a previous study, yes. Sight distance study that will require some parking removal in order clear sight distances from the driveway there. And I'm sorry, just going back to the previous one, we do have a number of raised crosswalks that are recommended throughout, and there is one on Figure 4F. The one
Yes,
that has the little triangles.
yes.
Sorry, I'm lighting up. The one that has the chevrons or the little triangles towards the left there. Those are pavement markings we use to indicate that you're approaching a speed hump or a speed table.
So that's in common usage now. So anytime there's a raised a speed table, the chevrons would be located either in front or actually on the raised section. Very good.
That is correct. We are at Ridge Road and Garden Way improvements. Again, we have curb bump outs being proposed with an addition of sidewalk reconstruction to allow pedestrians to cross at a shorter distance, extended stop bar as well, and some removal of parking along Garden Way. This is 21st to 24th Court Ridge Road improvements. Again, we have several curb bump outs as well as crossing striping for pedestrians. This is Ridge Road at Southway improvements. Here where there are a number of curb bump outs being proposed, as well as several refuge islands for pedestrians to be able to cross.
Sorry, excuse me, could you go back to the last slide real quick?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I did want to point out on this one, there is a recommendation to remove the current traffic signal and replace it with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That traffic signal is very much out of compliance with current standards. And so that would probably be a longer term recommendation as well, but I just wanted to point out that that one is there.
You say it's not in compliance with modern standards. So the red, yellow, and green are the wrong shade, or what's?
Correct. No, it's actually just being used as a pedestrian crossing device. It doesn't change for vehicular traffic. And so using an actual pedestrian crossing device like an RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, would make a lot more sense than having a full signal there. I think, did you?
Southway improvements where there are curb bump outs, extended stop bars, additional sidewalk, and striping. Here we have Ridge Road between Southway and Westway improvements. Again, similarly, you'll see curb bump outs, proposed striping for crosswalks, as well as stop bar extensions, raised crosswalks as well, some reconstruction of some ramps. Here we have Lakeside Drive from Lakeview Circle to Olivewood Court. Again, with the absence of sidewalk, it seems we're proposing a new sidewalk as well as extensions to people's driveways. Again, also kind of a realignment of the crosswalk here at the intersection of Maplewood Court. You can see that we're trying to propose a more perpendicular crossing.
On a Lakeside Drive, with the proposal for the sidewalks, the easement or the right-of-way, the city's right-of-way, actually, we own the land that the sidewalk would be on?
Would all be part of engineering study.
Here we,
Sorry, are you proposing stop signs instead of the yields at the tops of each court there? Okay, thank you.
as of right now, no.
Oh, no?
Actually, I think we do,
The
actually.
side roads, yeah.
Yeah, oh, the side, I'm sorry,
Side
yes,
roads, right?
yes.
You mean the side
Yes.
roads?
Yes.
Not along.
Not along the main road.
So we're getting requests for that too.
Yeah,
Oh, did you?
yeah. Which is understandable. Here we have Lakeside Drive from Westway to Lake Crest Drive. Here we're proposing a median due to the width of the roadway. Once again, narrowing the roadway kind of helps gives drivers the perceived effect to slow down. Here is Lassner Lane from Julian Court to Hedgewood Drive. Again, we have several curb bump outs proposed along the way with additional sidewalk to narrow the distance for pedestrians crossing. We have additional striping, of course, the continental crosswalks as well, and I believe there's some existing cars in the way that potentially may not be able to park there again. There's Lassner Lane at Rosewood Drive. Similarly, curb bump outs are predominant with extended sidewalks to narrow the gap for pedestrians to cross. Lassner Lane at Ivy Lane. Again, we have curb bump outs with sidewalk, striping for the continental crosswalks, extended stop bar. This one, due to the curb bump outs, we are actually proposing to move the stop bar back a bit. Here we have Lassiter Lane at Crescent Road. We have the stop bar being extended forward, along with curb bump outs, sidewalk, and possible green bicycle markings along Crescent Road.
I was just thinking the green bump outs, they're colored green, but it would be interesting if they were actually green. But the proposal is really, you're not making a proposal on the color, that's just a way of showing it out. But if they're green, they would certainly stand out.
I definitely agree. Right now, this is the ultimate location, and we are hypothesizing that it could possibly be grass. But in the short term, essence, you could use bollards or some sort of bollards of some sort actually would suffice to use as a temporary or short-term solution to see if it was effective.
We don't have a real good record with bollards, I don't think. I've seen a lot of bollards getting flattened around here.
So obviously, it's
I hate to say
it's
it.
preferred to have grass because it also helps with stormwater management and drainage as well. So it's more beneficial, but in the
Well,
more
yeah.
extensive construction of that, it's
I would
costly.
hope this is not like all concrete, so.
That's
That
not
would
our
be most expensive.
recommendation.
That would be-
It'd be more aesthetically pleasing to have grass.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So the idea is that you're just extending the existing curb and putting the grass in there. I wonder if also, is there anywhere, I've seen places that have done painting, like the artistic painting to narrow it. Is anywhere doing at the corners like this, again, as a sort of at least a preliminary thing for a visually doing that, even without the plastic bollards, but visually narrowing it? I think I've mostly seen it like along a long stretch. I don't know that I've ever seen it at a corner.
Yeah, there's definitely not standards for that, so it would be
Okay.
something that we wouldn't be able to follow, the MUTCD manual for, but I've seen it as well. I think that would have to be something we consider with you guys as the city.
Because I think I've realized since I've been on council how expensive concrete work is. So this is like looking at each of these has like added curb and concrete work. It seems like it's going to be a lot.
Right, so
Yeah.
the areas where you're bumping out, you're taking away the roadway and putting.
Right. No, but I'm thinking about the actual, pouring of concrete, of sidewalk and curb and things like that, which I think I'm not sure I'd really thought about how much that costs before I was on council. And it surprises me how much that sort of things work. So yeah, I know you're moving remote. So I guess you later on when you're resurfacing the road, you have less to resurface. But in the meantime, you have to do the curb and the containment for the grass, I guess, is what I'm thinking about.
And if I could add, you'll note in, obviously not showing on the screen, but in the actual study, there are short-term and long-term improvements, and most of the short-term improvements do mention installing temporary curb with flex posts at a lot of these bump outs. It doesn't mention paint specifically, but again, that could be something that the city could look at. So there is an interim step before getting to pouring the concrete for most of these.
Yes, Councilman.
I had just a few questions. One was back at where we were talking about what was happening near Greenbelt Elementary. You had put in a raised crosswalk and updated signage. I'm wondering, does that mean that there's additional stop signs or anything like that going into where the school is? And is this crosswalk put at the place where you see the most kids going into the school?
Crosswalk exists.
It exists currently.
It is actually,
Okay.
right now, it's actually a speed table.
Okay.
So what they're recommending is a changing, and then I think ideally a raised crosswalk meets the sidewalk at its level. There wouldn't be a curb ramp, so you wouldn't go down and then back up the raised crosswalk. What we do have and what we actually are going to be installing on Ridge, because of stormwater management issues and it does add cost, engineering and capital cost, is using the current curb ramps. And when we add a speed table, so they meet at the road level, then you walk back up and across. So this actually exists as a speed table with a crosswalk on it that we're calling a raised crosswalk. But what they're recommending is actually raising it so that it's at the level of the curb. You would fill in the curb ramps and the curb would just extend to the crosswalk. So that would be a longer-term
And
improvement.
as far as the stop sign, it's the stop for pedestrians sign that is already existing and would remain.
Can I, if you wouldn't mind, I have two other questions.
Please, continue.
When you were talking about the light that's in front of Greenridge House, have you found, I think Ms. Ferrer was talking about that. Does a stoplight slow down traffic more than a flashing light would? I mean, because I know we have a lot of people that would be crossing there to go into Greenridge House. And I don't know if your study looked at a pattern of, does a flashing stoplight slow down people more than an actual street light, even if the street light really doesn't change for, like, because I'm just thinking if I'm driving down there and I see a street light, I'm already thinking, oh, that street light might change versus the, and I'm just wondering what the data says on that,
We just
You
have a
know,
lot of seniors, it's a.
that are going across there.
And I think when that street,
I mean, in fairness,
So you're saying you see the light and you speed up because you want to get past it?
I don't
I
image,
know, you
but
slow down because
Right.
you're seeing the stoplight further away because it's up, right? So you're automatically gonna slow down because you know a stoplight is there. But it takes you longer to get to an actual flashing because it's on the side of the road. So I'm wondering if people would slow down more because the stoplight is there. And again, I don't know what the data says. That's my question.
I was gonna say, it's not a matter of, as engineers, I want to speak to you, they're required to follow the MUTCD. That device is not compliant with the MUTC. You would not be given permission to put that device in. It does not meet any of the criteria to be installed at that location. So that is the basis, I'm assuming, for their recommendation, is clearly it's not an appropriate use of the device as we have it now. Not saying it's not being ineffective or it's being effective, it's just in terms of whether it meets adopted road standards.
And to add to that, I do, the treatment that is recommended, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon is, and maybe we could add a graphic of it. This is a pretty busy
Oh, we have the same use.
slide. It's similar to what yes, thank you. Similar to what we have at St. Hughes. We'll be installing a few more up on Cherrywood and Hanover Parkway soon. So it's the pedestrian signal with the wig-wag lighting that's sort of like an ambulance light, but it's yellow and white. And they have a really high compliance rate for stopping traffic. And it would be push-button activated as this light currently is.
Is it possible to string that across the center of the road? So instead of being on the side, it's suspended in the middle? No? Hey, Mr. Roberts?
Well, I've never seen someone not stop for the one at Greenridge House. You know, when it turns red, everybody stops. But I have seen a lot of people not stop for the yellow flashing light at St. Hughes. You know, they just run right on through because it's yellow, and most people see yellow as a caution or a yield or something like that, not necessarily a stop, you know. So I guess that's a battle for the future for somebody. But personally, I would keep the one at Greenridge, whether it meets the state guidelines or not. It works, and probably works better, I think.
Let's keep moving along. How many more slides so we can pause and kind of go back and ask specific questions and take some public comment?
Got quite a few. We were on 60. I think there's a couple more to go. It ends with 8.
Okay, any comments from the public at this time? Oh, please go ahead.
Some questions, actually. Can we go to the slide, the Ivy Lane and Lassner?
Figure number, do you have, or you might not have it. Ivy Lane and Lassner?
fifty-one,
Figure 99?
56, 56, page 56?
I don't have your packet, 6C is,
It's up.
Page numbers are hiding in the middle.
Last name and Ivy Lane?
Yep. So my question here is just, so on the corner here of Ivy and Lassner, there's a very well-used playground here. And children often dart across the street right here, right where there's on the side where there's no crosswalk. I mean, that's just like people sometimes use paths that are not intended, but it's the path they want to use. And that's how people want to cross, and they cross there. So, whether or not it's the best place for a crosswalk, it is where people are crossing. And I wonder if there's a way we could accommodate that, because if people are going to use it, they're going to cross where they want to cross. There's-
I believe we looked at that once before. We have an issue with driveway aprons.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think there's a
So
driveway right there,
That's
isn't it?
been problematic at that location, trying to improve the crossing. So that's why we put the flashing stop sign in and so forth. But we can certainly, look at it again, but I'm fairly certain it
There's
has
just no
some
way to- Okay,
impediments,
well, I
yeah.
just asked because I'm very aware that people just dart across. And
There were a few other public comments that asked for more crosswalks where they see people crossing right at the wrong spots. If there's not a receiving end of sidewalk, we can't promote crossing at those areas.
Right. Okay, and then I wanted to, if we could go back to the Lakeside Drive with where you were adding the sidewalk in between, this one, yeah. I'm just wondering why only sidewalk here in this section of Lakeside Drive, because there's no sidewalk for the entire length of the neighborhood. So why just right here do we need a sidewalk?
So I think this one was twofold. It was to also work as a narrowing, and because these two courts were one of the only areas that weren't connecting safely to the inner trail network. And so that would give them the ability to come to, what is that, Maplewood?
Was there any consideration given to putting sidewalk throughout that neighborhood?
Lot tighter. This is the only area I think that it seemed feasible enough to fit within the roadway that was there.
Right, and then the other question I have about the sidewalk is, so the sidewalk where it goes between Lakeview Circle and Maplewood, that's my yard.
Yeah, that's one.
So that's my yard. So my question is just, though, there's this whole clump of trees that you see sort of right in the middle. That's my yard. And it's basically a straight drop off. Like it's not even there. Like there's a very small, like 3 or 4 feet where people sort of scooch there when a car comes, but there's not like a lot of flat area to put in a sidewalk that would be ADA compliant, because I mean it's a steep drop off. Like it's not like you could even walk down a hill. It's like a boom. So I just wonder how you would work something like that, because it would be dangerous. Like people, even if you could make it work, people would be like could fall into my yard when they're riding their bikes, and like there would
Obviously,
be
where there's
really
drop-offs, and I think
Okay.
it's, the idea was to pull some of the roadway in, right? So narrow some by using that area as
Oh,
sidewalk.
okay, well, that would
So
make
it
some
might
sense
split
too.
the
So
difference
it
of
wouldn't
that.
just be taking the screen space, it would be also taking the road. Well, that definitely makes more sense there.
Surveyed data, it's a lot easier to measure, but.
Yeah, but I think it's great to removing those spaces though, right at the end of Lakeview, and at the end of Olivewood is really great, because because that's a hill, so when you're coming up Lakeside, you can't see if there are any cars coming at you. So it's to not have any parking there, I think would be really good, because it would just enable cars to stay further to the right.
Okay, I have a couple of just general comments that sort of dovetail with some of the points that Councilmember Pompey just made. Just in terms of the study and looking at these slides, it doesn't really take into account the topography. For example, over on Garden Way and Ridge, Garden Way at that intersection actually is a hill. It's kind of steep. So with the sight line, if you are coming up as a pedestrian going south, I suppose, going towards Ridge, you can't really see around the corner. Cars can't see you too well because it's a hill. So I think in general, sometimes these slides don't really tell the whole story. Also, along the same lines where the proposal is to remove a parking space, it's not just the parking space sometimes that's obstructing the view or the sight line. It's the landscaping. So, as this is the staff in particular, as we're talking and discussing these improvements, safety improvements, I think we'll have to negotiate with GHI on some of the space removals and just the landscaping. The hedges are a little tall in some places. I know there's some standards, but sometimes the hedges are a little bit taller than that. So just general information, GHI, in the courts, there's parking for enough cars. The standard is what, 1.5 cars per unit?
Oh, the standard within GHI varies depending
Varies a
on
bit,
location.
yeah.
I mean, there are some courts that don't have parking, there are some that have visitor parking and so forth.
So I was thinking of the slide that on Ridge by Greenbelt Elementary School. I know that parking is a challenge right there. The residents actually have enough parking, but what happens is parents and whatnot, as they're dropping off their kids or picking them up, park there, and if there's not enough spaces, they actually pull into the parking lot. So that's a problem. And finally, the slide Lakeside and Lake Crest, where this proposal to add a median. I don't really think that that is a good idea. I think perhaps you base that on accident reports, but I think a lot of those accident reports may have been inside of the apartment development. The addresses are not synchronous through there. So if there was a accident report, it may not be referring to that exact area. So I think the street is fairly narrow. I see buses coming through there and I drive through there. Let's pause for a couple of questions from the public. Ms. Gournay, you had a question?
Please go up to the microphone.
Isabelle Gournay, I'm a member of APB, but you haven't seen me because I was out of the country. But I don't see the connection between the pedestrian network and what you are proposing. I'm all for crosswalks. I walk a lot in Greenbelt. And there has been a few attempts at connecting better crosswalks. And one of them is on Hillside. But there are many places where the natural crosswalk network stops. And here we are, and we can't cross the other roads.
So you're talking about connecting the inner walkways
Yes,
with
the
the
inner
pedestrian
walkways, because
crosswalk.
they are, of course, there's a major inner walkway, but there are also, it branches out towards like Hillside, Ridge, Crescent is a little different, but it's this is what Greenbelt is known for. This is what we appreciate, and we would like to feel safer when we stop being on a pedestrian pathway and we have to cross a road.
A few of these do connect the inner walkway system. Not in all places.
It's not in many places.
Yes, well, there is a challenge, and there's been a back and forth about, in part, how much parking would need to be removed in order to make the connections at all of them. But for instance, in Figure 4F, Ridge Road from 46 Court to Eastway 44 Court, that is a new connection that we're making there that we had heard requests about. There are some that are getting improved along Ridge as well. I hear what you're saying. I think there's another one, I can't remember off the top of my head now, that connects, that might be the one. There's another one that's connecting a playground. And Green Hill, yeah, Hillside also we haven't gotten to those slides yet, but Hillside is getting them as well. And so I definitely hear you. And if there are particular ones, that would be great feedback. The particular connections would be helpful because we definitely can't do all of them.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just a crosswalk, it's not that expensive. But also, in general, for instance, the crossing of Hillside and Northway is there are stop signs, but there are absolutely no marking on crosswalks. And I would really, I don't know, maybe it doesn't. Is it helpful? But I would say so. When a driver sees a crosswalk instead of just a stop sign, does he not stop?
We do have some. We're getting to that one. We haven't gotten to that slide yet.
Okay.
But we are adding some there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So let's keep moving along.
There,
Oh, I'm sorry.
do we want to do, there was one, and actually this would have been better to address. This came in earlier as the more general question. This is from Heather Blomhard in Greenbelt, asking about Greenbelt East. And she was asking specifically about and we talked about this a little bit, the background on how this study was scoped and why it was just this area and not other parts of the city. And specifically, she says she has some concerns about Hanover Parkway. The speed limit there is 30 miles per hour, but so often drivers are going at unsafe speeds and weaving around folks that are turning into the shopping center, one of the medical office building lots, or residential areas. In theory, the traffic circle should help force drivers to slow down, but many drivers seem to instead take it as a challenge. All this makes it feel unsafe for me as a driver, let alone as a pedestrian. So and she talks about jurisdictions. Is that all in our jurisdiction more a county concern or a city concern? And I know, Jamie, you mentioned, because there are some of those improvements that weren't in the scope of this study, but are being done with ARPA money. So I don't know if we can make some general statements related to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we also have her email, and we'll be responding to her tomorrow as well. She raised some very good questions. But as Jamie has explained in the beginning, these streets were the streets that we had the most outstanding number of concerns raised regarding speeding. If you recall, we don't really, we didn't receive many within Greenbelt East. And if you remember, in 2005, we did a $500,000 most comprehensive traffic calming project in Greenbelt East, touching on many of the residential streets, adding speed humps, small roundabouts, and so forth. So I think that's why we see a reduced number there. But we agree, we know there are significant concerns with Hanover Parkway, and that's why, and we'll provide some of that background information for her in terms of what we have planned in the ARPA projects to improve upon, the pedestrian safety as it relates to Hanover Parkway.
And that would be, I think if you can make sure council gets copied on that, because I'm sure she will not be the only person asking us these questions about why was this study only done in Central Greenbelt and not
We
not
see
Greenbelt
that
East.
a lot, and one of the, I was explaining Jamie, giving her some of the history. I've been here 30 years, and I can say I have not undertaken a traffic calming project in historic Greenbelt or Greenbelt Center. Northway was done prior to getting here. That's probably one of our first one we ever did when we did speed bumps. We did some significant improvements in Greenbelt West on Breezewood Drive. We did safe routes to school, and we've done some other upgrades there. Looking at doing some improvements on Cherrywood, and then we have obviously the improvements we did in Greenbelt East. So we are trying to do a very equitable approach to this, but a lot of our responses are in response to the number of, concerns that we get raised. And then we do the speed studies, and where it's warranted, we'll propose implementation. So I encourage anybody who has a concern, they can certainly reach out. We keep a schedule of those complaints, and we investigate them as we can with our resources.
And that background is helpful. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Continue along. So this one's Green Hill Road at Crescent Road. Similarly as the previous proposed improvements, we have curb bump outs, green bicycle markings, as well as extended sidewalk and sidewalk ramps. Green Hill Road, Orange Court, and Greenway Place. This is also demonstrating the same curb bump outs as well as extended sidewalks, and of course the pavement markings and extended stop bars. Here we have Green
I usually
Hill.
have one of my campaign signs right there on that spot, so we'll have to change that.
Here we have Green Hill Road, Hillside Road, Research Road, again, with more curb bump outs and extended sidewalk ramps being proposed, and striping for the continental crosswalks. Here is Hillside Road from Northway to Woodland Way. As you can see on the right-hand side, curb bump outs as well, sidewalk. We have more bump outs as well at the crossing over here, right near Woodland Way, with new striping as well, and a stop bar, as well as a raised crosswalk with updated signage. Here is Hillside Road and Crescent Road. Again, multiple raised crosswalks are being proposed, as well as new sidewalks to be proposed as well, leading to the intersection where there are curb bump outs, a stop bar being extended, as well with additional markings for the crosswalks.
Yeah, this is one of the locations where the inner walkway from an underpass emerges right where that bus stop is, and you're just kind of left there to cross the street. So I appreciate Ms. Gournay's points.
Yeah, I would, I guess I would add, so the crosswalk that you see that's showing as raised here is actually going to be installed as part of our ARPA funded projects, but not as a raised crosswalk. Staff did determine that that was the better one rather than the one by the bus stop that's very close to the intersection, and having two crosswalks that close to each other can really, I think, present more of a threat to a pedestrian than not. A similar conversation or kind of analysis on Southway and determining which of the three crossings that do exist there, or the three connections, made the most sense for us to install as a marked crosswalk. And so that's why this one is, these two are picked rather than the one by the bus stop. But
So-
this, ultimately, in the long term, this sidewalk would connect you to the bus stop.
So the crosswalk that goes across Crescent, that's like right above the overpass, and there's no place. What is that supposed to connect to? Is that new sidewalk there?
That's a new sidewalk beneath it, or along that stretch, which it looks like would connect to this sidewalk down here. I'm not sure where it would connect on the other side, though.
I think the intentions were to remove the parking from that area because it's unsafe in the intersection. We can confirm the
Crosswalk
connectivity.
there would, a lot of people, most people use the underpass and don't cross the street. So you might want to put an asterisk by there. Do you? Oh, shame on you.
So that concludes the display boards that we had. This is just a recollection of our timeline. Once again, thank you for having me present. We look forward to working with you all.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for facilitating the public meeting and taking in all the information with staff. It's difficult sometimes. Change is challenging, and the idea, no matter what's proposed, there's always going to be some lively discussion. So, because this is Center City, some of those discussions will have to occur with GHI. So, at some point, when we get the draft, we'll have to formally invite them to comment. But as I said, when you talk about sight lines and parking, the landscaping is also an issue. So I think because this is focused on safety, I think that some of the recommendations should be very seriously considered and should be weighted very heavily because it is about safety. Yes, Ms. Niesel.
Yes, this is kind of going back to the very beginning where you talked, or in the packet, there were some things that were not considered and things that were. One thing that was not considered anywhere was dropping the speed limit. And I'd heard specifically from residents along Lakeside Drive that, especially given that the majority of drivers are going 20 miles per hour, perhaps we could consider dropping the speed limit there. Is there a reason that you didn't consider that in your study?
So the design speed, or the speed that is geometrically per the horizontal and vertical of the roadway, is what dictates what cars will go, what vehicles will drive, whether or not the posted speed is above or below that. So yes, it gives those that are following the rules the perception that they need to lower their speeds, but the ones that are speeding are not the ones that are going to follow that in the first place. So you could try it, but it's not going to be as successful as changing the geometry of the roadway to make people less comfortable with speeding. It's coming down.
I'm like, is it gonna come through?
Yes. Can it stop before we leave?
I know.
Let's see, are there some more comments from the public? Yes, Damon.
Hi, Damian Ossie, Hillside Road. Is this on?
Flip a little bit
Can't
higher.
hear him for the rain.
Damian Ossie,
That's
Hillside
better.
Road. I had a question really about the community, the public meeting that was a couple of weeks ago. Will have GPI or staff looked at all the comments and done any analysis of those yet? Or I was hoping to see some response tonight, but so what's going on with all those comments? Thank you.
Sure. So I had mentioned at the beginning, and I'm sorry if it wasn't too clear, we thought about trying to make revisions in the short period of time, but because it was just a couple of weeks, I don't think that was going to be possible. So yes, all of the notes have been transcribed from that meeting. We have all taken a look at them, but we haven't convened to talk about them. We were actually going to wait till after this meeting. So there are comments from APB as a whole, some APB members individually, all of the comments that came up during the community meeting. All of those post-its have been transcribed, so we do have that into a document. And because I know one of your concerns was Laurel Hill, is that right? Am I correct about that?
Yeah. I noticed the Hillside is included, but for some reason the Hillside and Laurel Hill intersection is not.
Yes, so that we do have that documented. So I want to assure you we do. And so we're going to convene at a staff level after this meeting to talk through all of the comments that we have gotten and see which ones are feasible and can be incorporated into the final draft. I don't think all of them will be, but we are going to look at all of them. You're welcome.
I'd like to invite John Campanile and Isabel Gournay from APB to just share some of your thoughts about the process.
And Ben Friedman, as the chair of APB, he's online.
Are you online there?
Yes, John Campanile, 15S, Laurel Hill.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
Okay. Okay. Looking at the bump outs in particular, where there are cars parked along the road and a bump out appears then towards the end, no problem. If you're a cyclist, you're already in the roadway. But where these bump outs kind of slide out kind of quickly, where there may be no parking, you find yourself moving into traffic kind of at a sudden, maybe there are certain bump outs I noticed that were not all too sudden. They're very gradual, and that's nice. But for example, at Garden Way on Ridge, you have, if there are cars parked there, so you're in the lane. But if there are no cars, and you find yourself having to come out in a suddenly sort of, how does that get addressed? I mean,
Speaking as a vehicle exiting a parking space?
No, as a
At the bump
cyclist
out?
approaching
As a
the bump
cyclist.
out.
Approaching that intersection with a bump out that
Just
comes,
like
that's
was
rather.
not in the middle of the lane, but was instead riding
I mean,
in the parking.
should be in the lane.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance depending on the situation you're in. If there aren't any vehicles, like you're saying, a gradual bump out may be more conducive for bicyclists.
Or some sort of painting, some gradient that your bump out can remain, but if there were some lines drawn with crosses, that people would not park in there, then that would make a sudden bump out even easier to negotiate with car traffic.
Yeah, John, I've actually seen that. It's sort of like an indented bump out. And it's, as a cyclist, it can be, if the lines or the space that's allowed through the bump out is too narrow, it can be, I don't particularly like that. But on the other hand, a bump out with the bicycle lane going through the bump out can actually serve as sort of an island for a cyclist to stop at a red, instead of blowing through the stop sign. It can serve as an island where cyclists is sort of stop. So on some of the bump outs, that, in my opinion, that would be a good idea.
I think so too. Some sort of cut through, but okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Friedman, are you online?
Yeah, I'm right here.
How are you tonight?
See, I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's raining a little bit, but so
Yes,
far
it
it's
is.
dry. You're in the municipal building.
I got elevators to deal with. Don't give me a roof.
So, Ben, can you talk a little bit about working with the consultants and the process, the way that APB went about providing its recommendations, or any high points or things that stand out that you want to highlight in APB's recommendations?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, we started talking about this a couple of years ago, and it came up in an APB meeting, I think was sort of the genesis of this whole initiative. And, really in response to some serious accidents on Lakeside Drive, and then expanded to look at other areas within Center City where there were other concerns as well, particularly on Ridge Road, for instance, where right after the entire road was repaved, all of a sudden speeds of vehicles went significantly higher. If you remember, there were quite a few potholes on Ridge, particularly between Garden Way and Laurel Hill. And once the paving went in, I think bus speeds and other car speeds went up. So that was, I think, we're glad to see that the study is coming to fruition here. I think in our review, we looked at it both individually and in our meeting, and I think had some in-depth discussions with the consultant that were very productive. And I found the community meeting to be particularly engaging to hear input from residents and others who were reviewing the recommendations. I actually just returned, and I apologize I can't be there in person. I just returned from Chicago, where in the neighborhood I grew up in, there are all of these bump outs and that have been put in the last 10 or 15 years. And they do serve to really calm the traffic in those residential neighborhoods. There are also stop signs at every single intersection where there are crosswalks and people crossing the roads. So, I saw it in person and thought it was working quite effectively. So I'm looking forward to seeing us actually hopefully be able to put some of this into implementation. One of the things about the stormwater that I noticed in particular with in Chicago was that there's a gap in between the curb and the bump out, if you will. And these were all concrete. There was no grass, but they were concrete and I think like stripe lined in some cases. So just to come back to sort of the process here, I think, in terms of specific comments we had, I think we provided them in pretty good detail through Jamie to the consultant. And I think, council echoed a number of our questions and concerns. And I don't really have anything else to add there tonight. I don't know if Isabel, you wanted to add anything, but I don't think you were present for the discussion. You were out of the country, right? Yeah. So that's all I guess I have to say about it right now.
Okay, Mr. Freeman. So, what do you think about these consultants? Should we keep them around?
I think they're doing a good job.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess one question I had that it didn't occur to me until the meeting was whether the rubric for sort of prioritization might also be able to include kind of a weighting scale of the number of reported accidents vis-a-vis the actual number of vehicles. So whereas, if there were lower vehicle trips on the road, but a higher number of accidents, that might indicate a higher priority area. But that's just, that's sort of something that probably could have gone into the scope as opposed to at this point.
No, I think that's an important point for staff to consider as we move forward with engineering and construction. I imagine we would not do this all at once. So would you actually prioritize areas to approach based on the incidents, weighting? How would we go about
A number of factors. I mean, a lot of it also would be on our reconstruction schedule and where Public Works is working, and because it makes sense to do these improvement projects in tandem with when we're already doing concrete and asphalt work. So we would look at all of those and probably have that discussion, just also get some insight from the engineers in terms of, based on their analysis, whether there's certain roads that, are higher priority than others, so.
Okay. So along those lines, we're talking about with this process and the timeline, we would be talking about construction starting in maybe the fall of 2025 or more likely the spring of 2026.
Our goal is to have recommendations ready for budget time, and a lot of it will be dependent on availability of funding to fund them. As you know, we typically get $30,000 for traffic calming a year. That is not going to implement very much of this study. So, and we can also look at grant funding as well, opportunities, especially where we're, improving connectivity and so forth.
Right. And the other factor, which has become large, is just contracting with the engineers or construction people with all of the ARPA money around and so many projects. It's really kind of hard to pin down contractors to do the work. Ms. Pomp.
Would the Vision Zero grant that we're hopefully applying for, would any of those monies be applicable to this, since so much this is pedestrian safety? Would this be part of that plan, I guess is my question.
Great question. So we got that award. So the Vision Zero grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we'll be using for Vision Zero action plan we're working on the grant agreement with the feds right now. And actually, what the hope is with that is to hopefully have a demonstration or pilot project in each of the 3 discrete areas of the city. And the one that I think would make a great demonstration project for Greenbelt Center City is Ridge and Southway, and doing that with bollards and potentially some paint with the flex posts and potentially paint. So it would not be a permanent installation, and in fact, it can't be under the demonstration project rules because it's meant to be temporary and a pilot project and not a full capital project. So yes, in that case, and we may even be able to take some of the insights from this and could just be bump outs. It could be something else to the other parts of the city for the demonstration project that may happen there. So yes, I do think some of it will inform Vision Zero for sure. When we are working on it, this report will be one of the reports that those consultants will get, that we will work with. And I just wanted to also note that some of these projects probably also look familiar because some of them are being implemented with the ARPA Ped Bike funding. Not very many of them, but a few of them will show up either in sort of their short or midterm form or in their full form.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that answer. It kind of responds to a question or a request that's online. It's from Bob Rudd. I would request and suggest that any new traffic calming and revenue enhancement options the council may consider first be fully tested in their neighborhoods with 4 blocks of their homes and neighbors. So I think what he's saying, you kind of responded to that by saying that these bump outs would be painted sort of like a piloted trial basis to see how they work, and it's not initially a permanent installation.
Correct. So we would, and it would actually be a requirement of that grant if we do it as a demonstration project to have baseline data and do an evaluation. So we would look at stop compliance, speeds, things like that, crossing times, all of those metrics, and analyze those to see if any changes need to be made, if these are good changes that we might want to actually move into a capital project.
And let's see, Mr. Rudd. Yes, well, wait, let me, so Mr. Rudd says, council should fully volunteer their immediate locations together with their neighbors as a final beta test to, wait a second. Council should fully volunteer their immediate locations together with their neighbors as final beta testers prior to putting them in other neighborhoods. council members should voluntarily lead the way on this. I think he's saying we should put it in front of, we should put it in front
I'm
of your
ready.
house.
I'm ready. Put the sidewalk in front of my house. I'll take it. Give me that new crosswalk down there. Take it with, I'm ready. Bring it on. Bring it on. We're ready.
Councilmember McKinney, as we wrap up.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. In the full document, and on page 18, you have listed that it's conceptual cost estimates, but I know we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So there's not really costs in there outlined, right? It's more, okay.
Yeah,
But in-
if you look at each, the page preceding the images, it's an estimated cost. And in the appendix, there's a whole listing of how those estimated costs were applied per flex post, per quick curb, how much concrete costs.
I guess I got a little confused because on here it says 18 in the table of contents, and I don't think it's 18. Yeah. So if somebody's reading this,
No, there's just a small section that talks about conceptual cost estimates on page 18.
so if somebody was going to go and look at the actual cost breakdown, they would go someplace else.
It then directs them to go to the appendix. Yes, because it's a lengthier document that outlines individual costs that go into the conceptual cost estimates.
So once again, this is a draft document that's come to council. It's going to go back to APB. Staff's going to review the comments from tonight, go back to APB, back to the consultants for a final report. And this is all conceptual at this time. The engineering and the time frame and which projects could actually be undertaken and when is all up in the air. But I really appreciate this work. It's an excellent overview of some improvements that could save people's lives. So as we move forward, just want to make sure that I express our appreciation for the work that you put in and continuing to work with staff to make these recommendations. And also to APB, thank you so much for your focus on this. So at this time, I think we're going to pivot to some information items. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. This is great.
It's
Thank you.
fantastic. So we've got a couple of information items. We're going to go into an executive session at about 9. So, Mr. Summerone, what do you have for us?
We're working on a EPA community charge grant partnership agreement. There's a very short window to submit an application that we think we have a competitive application. It will be in partnership with the Anacostia Trails Heritage Area community members. And obviously the city, and we need to execute a non-binding MOU partnership agreement to be able to submit a grant application tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Yes. So we want to sunlight this, daylight this to say we're working on this. I will share the details. I will share the final document with council tonight. And if you have any objections, please let me know.
Good. I made a good contact with a couple of representatives of the EPA, our district, at the NLC conference. So, look forward to seeing this. This is with AFA, Anacostia Trails Heritage Area.
Correct. So this will be a partnership. Jamie, do you want to add anything to the?
Did you want an outline of what the grant is for?
I think it'll be helpful that we're talking about, it's in line with previous approvals from council. You want to go into the details of the complete streets and Cherry Wood Lane?
Certainly. So this is the EPA's Community Change Grant. It's a really unique grant opportunity where actually the lead, the partnership, you have to have what's called a statutory partnership in order to apply. And a CBO, a community-based organization, has to be at least one party to that partnership. So in this case, we are looking to work with AFA, and we would have a collaborating partner would be the Friends of the Greenbelt East Trail. And so the projects that we're looking at are Cherrywood Lane, Complete, and Green Streets. Phase 1 and Phase 2, that's the biggest component. It would be an amazing opportunity for us to be able to move to construction on both phases, but to finalize engineering on Phase 2
That would be
and get
great,
to
yeah.
construction on both phases, as well as some sidewalk improvements along 193 near Greenbelt Park, and hopefully implementing continued planning and possible construction implementation of the Greenbelt East Trail. So we've also been in touch with MDOT for a letter of support, since a fair amount of the work would be done on their right-of-way. But the Cherrywood Lane part is very exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. I look forward to seeing that. And, yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity.
And it's due tomorrow.
Go home so you can work on that. Ms. Pompey? Or, Ms. Pope.
Oh, I have just a question about the striping on Lake Crest Drive. So I know they've been working on, they had put in the stripes for the crosswalks, just right, but we have these little blue little things in the, sort of in the middle of the lanes, and it's creating, it's quite, it's a safety issue. So I'm just wondering when they're gonna put the real striping in there.
Yeah, they're working on it this week. Obviously, it's weather dependent. The markings that you see in the middle of the lane, they're yellow markings. They have laid down the yellow marks. They're little squares, and that's the trajectory of the yellow line that's going to be painted in the middle. So they've mapped that out, outlined that, and they're working towards doing that line. They've done the parking stalls, they've done the crosswalk. Next in line will be the medium, the middle line.
Yeah, it's just getting a little dangerous because it's get dark early, and people are, and so I just want to make sure that we're on top of that. And there are some blue markings now, some utility markings on the newly redone road. So is there some work happening?
Not aware of water projects going in, but the blue lines, they're meant to fade away over time, so they're not permanent.
All the way down Lake Crest.
Yeah.
I mean, parts of Lake Crest, down by the high rise, there's a whole bunch.
Oh, well, Terry will be too soon.
But we
to
do
talk.
have some outstanding permits with WSSC for work to be done in that area, so it could be associated with that.
So, I mean, I'm just wondering, because we just redid the road, so does that mean they're gonna come in and dig up the new road, possibly? Was there no?
I will check to see what's going
We
on. with
provided
this.
WSC a list of our road plans and schedules. So I can't speak to that. I can look into the status of those permits that we have issued and to see, get an update from WSSC.
And the second thing is, Judy Parker just had a few weeks ago a bad fall over by the co-op, tripping, and so, and I did look. We have this red brick paved crossing that's going from the parking lot, from the beginning of the parking lot into the co-op. But it's not very even. I think we need to take a look at it because it's quite hazardous, I think. You can trip easily. So I'd like for someone to take a look at that and see if we can make that, smooth that out or make sure that it's secure.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll to follow up with the team. We did look at it. It's obviously got some wear and tear, and it's been patched over time. We'll look to get pricing on it. It's not something that's currently included in our budget, so we'll have to see what the cost will be and how do we pay for it. I understand that the injury happened at another location.
Yeah, it did not happen on that, but when I
yes.
was down there looking at the area after she fell, because she came across the little island where we have the pavers, I guess. Correct. Yeah, so I'm assuming we made sure all these pavers are in a safe place.
I walked the pavers. There's a lot of issues with the pavers. One, they're I think for a really agile, able, mobile person with good eye perception is good. They're not really. They were put together in some way for people to cut through the medians to parking spots, but I don't think that they're ideal places for people to cross. Just because if you're carrying groceries, you don't have the clearance. It's really not a walkway. So I think it does raise the question whether we should have those pavers at all, because they're not leveled. They're not even, they're not continuous. They are just put down and fixed into the ground. Terry, are you familiar with these pavers on that median?
I mean, they're there for convenience. I mean, quite honestly.
Yeah, they're there
when
for
you come
convenience,
across,
for
you
sure.
know, I've used them as well.
Mhm.
But I'm saying if we maybe guide people, first we should make their secure, but then second, if we guide people to the crossing, at least our crossing should be in very good condition.
All right.
And this red brick path, it looks nice and all, but it just has a lot of wear and tear.
Right, brick, then that's the issue with brick. It's not like asphalt that lasts 20 years. Mhm.
Okay.
I think from a cost perspective, would be best to just rip the brick off and pave it, put asphalt on there.
Okay, I guess I have two items. So there was a complaint or a concern about the sidewalk in front of the library. I guess it's not very even, so I think I pointed that out to you. By
You did,
email.
yes, you did email that. I walked it myself. The sidewalk is not in the worst conditions as other sites. Obviously, it's not perfectly leveled.
So it's a high crossing point, people walking to get to the community center door. So if there's any way we can smooth any of it out, or I don't know.
Sorry, you said the community center door?
Well, the library, if you're walking if you're going to the library, if you continue on, that's the front door, one of the doors into the community center as well. So.
Okay, so I might have the wrong piece of the sidewalk then. I walked
On Crescent? Right?
on Crescent at the entrance of the library, of the road. So that there's a piece of the sidewalk there that's fractured.
Oh, okay.
Right as you come off the ramp.
Right.
I thought that was the section.
Could be, I'm not.
So, but you're speaking about another section of sidewalk that needs to be looked at?
Resident was not crystal clear about what she just said in front of the library.
Right, so I ran it from, this was during my morning run. No, this was during my morning run.
Multitasking.
I was multitasking, that's right. I went to the gym and I said, the mayor's on me about this, so let me take a look at this.
Hey, and so please take a look at that. The other concern, it's not a concern, but there's a PGCMA meeting tomorrow. It's in New Carrollton. I believe it starts at 6:30. It's always nice that as many of us who can attend should attend, because just networking and sharing concerns with our neighbors and our sister municipalities is very, very important. So I do plan on attending, and I hope all 6 of you are there as well.
Greenbelt Station has an HOA meeting, so I will try to see if I can come, but
Okay.
we have that.
I think
it's a conflict.
It's hybrid too, so in case you.
If it is hybrid, that would be great.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Jamie, Terry, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey, at this time, we are going to go into an executive session. It's 9 o'clock. And Mayor Pro Tem, let's see, we're going here, or are we going in the library? We can stay here.
Yeah, and we need to go into the open special meeting first.
Okay. I hereby call a special meeting of the Greenbelt City Council to order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Here.
Here, yes.
Here, we're just going into the
Here,
closed-
okay.
Ms. Pompey,
Here.
Ms. Pope,
Here.
Mr. Roberts, Ms. Weaver,
Here.
Mayor Jordan.
I'm here. So the purpose of this special meeting is to go into an executive session to discuss city manager evaluation. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like
Yeah,
to?
so I see Mr. Martinez here. Are the consultants going to be joining us online, or is it just going to be?
9:15.
9:15, okay. Just so that I can include that in the motion. I move that council go into closed session in accordance with section 3-305B1 of the general provisions article of the annotated code of the public general laws of Maryland. 1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. The purpose of this meeting is to address personnel matters over which this public body has jurisdiction, and 2, the city manager's evaluation overview. In addition to council, City Manager Salmaron, Director of Human Resources Dwayne Martinez, and at some point the consultants who conducted the evaluation process will be joining us. Note that council will not return to open session following this closed session.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Pope has seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Neesel,
Yes.
Ms. McKinney,
Yes.
Ms. Pompey,
Yes.
Ms. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
No.
Ms. Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes. Okay, it's, let's see, the clock says 9:01. Oh, 9 o'clock on the dot. Man, we made it. So, let's see. So our consultant will be joining on Zoom, or how's she gonna dial in? Okay, so so we're not gonna close, we're not gonna lock the room, but we're going to wait for. Yeah, for a couple minutes, yeah. Right. Right. So regardless, I believe we've got.
We can lock the webinar.